On behalf of the Council.
President, honourable members, Commissioner, today, on the 7th of October, we mark the 2-year of Hamas's terrible terrorist attack against Israel. We remember the 1,200 innocent civilians who lost their lives. We also remember the 251 hostages taken on that day of 7th of October 2023. Some have since been brought back, but with traumas for life. Others have sadly been killed, and some remain in cruel captivity for now 2 years. Our thoughts are with all the hostages and their loved ones. Some of you family members are here with us today. I have no words for your pain. Thank you for being with us in Strasbourg. The EU welcomes the US President's commitment to ending the war in Gaza, and we are hopeful for the negotiations currently taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Finally, there is a renewed hope for having the hostages released and putting an end to the tremendous suffering of the civilians in Gaza. We strongly urge all parties to seize the opportunity, not least Hamas. We desperately need a ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and unhindered humanitarian access to Gaza. Once conditions are in place, the enormous task of reconstruction lies ahead. The EU stands ready to play an active role due to our consistent commitment, including as the largest humanitarian donor in Gaza and biggest provider of assistance to the Palestinian Authority. We must also build on the political momentum to find a credible pathway towards a two-state solution, where two states, Israel and Palestine, can live side by side in peace and security. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I give the floor now to Madam Suica, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Chair. Dear members of the European Parliament, as you heard, on this day, 2 years ago, we woke up to the terrible news of an attack that caused at least 1,195 victims and led to 251 hostages that have been held captive by Hamas. I want to welcome the members of the families of hostages who are present today in the Parliament, maybe not in this chamber. In these 2 years, pain and suffering have been the reality of Israelis and Palestinians. Heartbreaking images are spreading all over the world. In these 2 years, violence and war have continued, causing more than 65,000 reported Palestinian victims and instability in the broader Middle East region. In these 2 years, the humanitarian situation in Gaza has become unbearable. President von der Leyen recalled during her State of the Union address 1 month ago that what is happening in Gaza has shaken the conscience of the world. The European Union has continuously called for a ceasefire, for the release of all remaining hostages and the resumption of the humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, working tirelessly with regional and international partners. Honourable members, I would like to once again reiterate that the European Union has been and it is the largest humanitarian donor in Gaza. 2 weeks ago, the Commission announced an additional €50 million in emergency humanitarian aid to deliver life-saving assistance both in Gaza and the West Bank. This will bring the total humanitarian allocation to Palestine to almost €220 million this year. Returning from an exceptionally important UN General Assembly week, it is clear for me that we need to be unequivocal in our support to the multilateral system. In this context, we believe that only with the United Nations and its agencies in a central role, the badly needed humanitarian surge can work. In this regard, the Commission takes good note of your plenary resolution of the 11th September, where you called for the mandate and funding of UNRWA to be reinstated in full with strong oversight and accountability. Guaranteeing immediate support in the short term is essential, but we need to keep the longer-term political perspective in mind. Europe's goal has always been the same: real security for Israel and a safe present and future for all Palestinians. We are now at the key moment of decision of whether this terrible war will finally come to an end. The European Union has welcomed the 20-point plan on Gaza presented by the United States. We remain a steadfast proponent of peace in the Middle East. The plan presents a credible framework in this direction. The European Union stands behind the plan's critical elements. First, no role for Hamas, no displacement, no annexation including of the West Bank, no threats emanating from Gaza to its neighbors, and no military operations. A number of elements are now being negotiated in detail, but the European Union will play its part in the implementation of the plan. We are encouraged by Israel's positive reaction to the peace plan and call on its leadership to work towards its implementation in good faith. We also note Hamas' stated readiness to release all hostages and end the conflict, while urging it to engage credibly and constructively in the process, including through disarmament and the renunciation of any claim to post-war governance. We also welcome the joint statement by Arab and Muslim foreign ministers. Regional leadership will be a critical enabler in every step of the implementation of this plan. It is important, however, to emphasize that transitional arrangements should pave the way for lasting and sustainable peace. A credible pathway towards Palestinian statehood and the two-state solution will be key, based on the principles endorsed by a large majority of UN member states. The European Union supports a clear role for the Palestinians in the future of Gaza. To this end, the European Union will continue to support the Palestinian Authority to implement the needed reforms as they have been proposed by the Palestinians themselves. The Palestine Donor Group, announced by President von der Leyen in this House, will serve as a forum to check progress on this endeavour. Let me recall that the European Union is the biggest provider of external assistance to the Palestinians. We presented a programme worth €1.6 billion for 25-27 with the aim to support Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian population. The emergency funding package announced in the margins of UN General Assembly is an important step for stabilising the fiscal situation of the Palestinian Authority, and it can be dispersed through the European Union's robust funding system, so-called PEGAZE. In New York, we signed a €400 million loan from the EIB, European Investment Bank, to the Palestinian Monetary Authority. This loan will support small and medium enterprises in the West Bank that are the backbone of the economy. The European Union is also ready to support Palestinian-led recovery and reconstruction of Gaza through a dedicated instrument, as announced by President von der Leyen. This needs to be coordinated and discussed with all stakeholders in the context of the economic development plans proposed by the United States President. The Palestine Donor Group, which will hold its first meeting soon, by the end of the year, including regional partners, will be crucial in bringing together European initiatives and coordination efforts. Beyond supporting governance agreements, the European Union can make concrete contributions to the implementation of the plan via various instruments at its disposal. Achieving demilitarisation and effective transitional governance and establishing an international stabilisation force are vital. This all will require careful coordination and stakeholders' engagement. We have experience in this respect, and we can bring it to the table. First, the European Union could support the proposed interfaith dialogue and the platform via existing peace-building programs, and the European Union is also well positioned to continue supporting regional integration in the Middle East. To end, dear colleagues, dear members, the tragedy in Gaza must end. Now is the time to begin the process of building a better future for Israelis, for Palestinians, and for the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. On behalf of the EPP Group, our colleague, Madam Bentelé.
Dear colleagues, dear Commissioner, now or never, a genuine diplomatic breakthrough is on the table, shaped by President Trump and broadly backed by the Arab and Muslim world, including those with the most influence on Hamas. The plan demands something from both sides, even if it's hard to accept that terrorists sit at the table at all. The plan puts strong emphasis on what matters most to us: better humanitarian aid delivery. Every day counts for civilians in Gaza and the hostages. Therefore, both sides must be pressed to agree quickly. I welcome those European leaders, including Germany, who are engaging to help finalizing the plan. For the EU, the plan is also a wake-up call. While Brussels talks about sanctions and cutting trade, the plan creates economic incentives, a special economic zone, lower tariffs and investment opportunities for everybody. And what has become the pet project of many here, a Palestinian state under PA rule, is mentioned only as a potential result of a long process. The plan rather establishes a board of independent Palestinian experts and, in general, international oversight over Gaza. High Representative Kallas often likes to state that there is no military solution. But if Hamas refuses to lay down arms, what then? Should Israel live under permanent threat? And in conclusion, especially today, on the second anniversary of October 7th, I really wish that our European institutions showed the same empathy for the traumatized Israeli people and the unsettled Jewish communities worldwide as they show for the Palestinian cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Tiene la palabra la señora García Pérez.
Mrs. García Pérez has the floor. Today, it is 2 years since the Hamas attack that left 1,195 people dead and 251 hostages. 2 years from that heinous day that changed the life for Israel and for the whole region. I should like to begin by remembering the victims, their families, that we hugged, embraced here in Strasbourg, and that I also embraced in Israel when I saw the horror in the kibbutz and in the musical festival where the barbaric acts took place. We will never forget them, their pain, and we will never stop asking for them to be released. But terrorism cannot be fought with genocide. You cannot vanquish terror by killing more than 67,000 Palestinians, including 20,000 children, nor in turning Gaza into a barren land where 2 million people are living without water, without medicine, without light, without food, and without hope. Terrorism is vanquished using the rule of law. Europe knows this. We have vanquished terrorism in all of its forms. We have done it with justice, and we have not done it with vengeance. And that is why, with the millions who have taken to the streets in our cities, calling for the end of genocide, the European Union cannot stand idly by. With the courage of men and women who took to the humanitarian flotilla and they tried to break the blockade of Gaza and bring aid to those who are dying, we cannot stand idly by. Those who were put in custody by the Israeli government. The Council must act by suspending the agreement with Israel and putting sanctions on the Netanyahu government, calling for an arms embargo, and they must do that with the new Gaza facility to rebuild what has been destroyed and to reestablish the dignity for the Palestinian people. The Trump plan cannot be used just to stop war and bring back the hostages. Any peace plan must also serve to open a way towards the establishment of a Palestinian state. Without this on the horizon, there will not be any peace possible. The main obstacle to peace is Netanyahu, because Netanyahu recognized that he financed Hamas to make the two-state solution impossible. So Europe must decide either being accomplice or being courageous. And courage is the only way that we can defend the two-state solution, two peoples, two states living in peace and in equality. Let us put an end to genocide. Let humanity speak. Thank you.
Señora García Pérez. Our next speaker, Mr. Tanger Correa. You have the floor.
Senhor Presidente.
President, Minister, Madam Commissioner, honourable colleagues, hallelujah. There's light. For years now, an international solution was being sought for Gaza, and now the Americans have found this solution. I think it's absolutely positive, because without this, we won't have peace or stability. This is the path we must go down, not just for Gaza, but also for the West Bank territory. The European Union has been falling short of expectations regarding Middle East policy. It's been giving money, European money, that's not reaching the people. People are going hungry. And the aid that Madam Commissioner mentioned is going to go through who? Is it channeled through the United Nations, through Hamas? Let's not forget that we have a real risk here that large populations in Gaza and Palestinians will be still close to Hamas. So what's going to happen? How is it going to be done? There can only be a state for Palestine if that state recognizes the state of Israel. And that has been the stumbling block for all these years, this lack of recognition of the state of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, colleague. If you want peace for the Jews and for the Palestinians, need to accept Trump's peace plan, because all the ingredients are there in this plan. Israel already agrees, so now we're waiting for Hamas. Are they prepared to finally to release the hostages? Everything depends on this. If this door doesn't open, then the path to peace is closed. So instead of sanctioning Israel, we need to make sure that Hamas releases the hostages. And then we will be able to see a path full of obstacles, full of holes, because the traumas on the two sides are huge. But the opportunities that we have at the moment with this plan to see if only small steps of a peace plan and to avoid any further 7th of October, well, we need to open the door to this opportunity. Thank you.
Renew Group, Monsieur Roberta.
Peace, two states, not yet. But if it were at least an end to shelling, a ceasefire, and a release of hostages, how wonderful that would be. Let us cross our fingers. Let us hope. But let us also try to understand, why has Donald Trump decided to twist Netanyahu's arm? Why did he give the U.S. its role of arbitrator that he had given up until now under his presidency? Israel were it to annex the West Bank, it would be an end of the Abraham Accords, the only success Trump has notched. And it was also added that it would be the end to the contract between the Gulf states and the White House. And France and Great Britain decided to change the stakes by making the movement towards recognizing Palestine. Humiliated by Putin in Ukraine, Trump was at risk of losing his footing in the Middle East. Suddenly, he was isolated, and he, like all, realized that strength was needed, and we as Europeans should learn that lesson. In the face of people who want no good for us, in the face of Trump and Putin, we have to flex our muscles and our strength, finding new allies, and we mustn't allow not even one case of a single incursion into our airspace. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur. Our next speaker is Mr. Sofdale on behalf of the Greens.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak in Danish. Today,
2 years ago, Hamas carried out a brutal terror attack, adding further trauma to Jewish history. My thoughts go to the affected families and the hostages, and there are no excuses for killing innocent civilians. The Israeli response was heavy bombs that destroyed everything. An incredible number of killed and traumatized people and the blocking of humanitarian aid. There are no excuses for killing innocent civilians. We are seeing human-created hunger now in the entire region, and in this vacuum, in several European cities, millions of people have taken to the streets to protest what's going on. A lot of civilians are trying to break the block and deliver humanitarian assistance to the region. What we need is a permanent ceasefire and the release of all hostages. And we need a formal recognition that even as a Palestinian, you have a right to live a decent life in your home region. And any murder requires a heavy response. And it is important that we end up with a two-state solution where the Palestinians and the Israelis consider each other neighbors and are able to live together. And the peace must ensure that every Palestinian has a right to remain in Palestine. What we are seeing now from Europe's side is absolutely shameful, in my opinion. Thank you.
The legacy of the Palestinian genocide, the systematic failure of political leadership, and in some cases the EU's active complicity will have ramifications for decades. First and foremost, the profound trauma of mass displacement, of the loss of multiple generations of families, of tens of thousands of orphans, of forced starvation will be catastrophic. Palestinians may never be able to forgive the Western and Arab world. But it is not just Palestinians. Across Europe, young and old have taken to the streets in ever-increasing numbers. They have been beaten and criminalised for standing up for international law. More than 100 civilians, EU civilians, and 3 members of this House were illegally abducted by Israel for trying to do what their governments should have been doing, which was to end the illegal blockade. And neither the Council or the Commission thought to mention them today. How is it that a small, oppressive foreign regime built on racism and violent ideology has been able to infiltrate our institutions and dominate our foreign and domestic policy, to create a situation where the freedoms, interests and wishes of our own citizens have been trampled on? We absolutely need the killing to stop, but this peace plan is colonialism. Gaza does not need a viceroy, and certainly not one who prosecuted an illegal war in Iraq. Gaza needs to be free from occupation, and Palestinians need to be treated with respect and given the autonomy for their own future. International law is the only framework for peace. Palestinians need more than EU money. They need justice.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the ESN Group, Mr. Schell.
Donald Trump
has presented a peace plan for the Middle East, and Metz is being asked to get his checkbook out and pay for it. And it's the same with Afghanistan or Ukraine. Americans do the deal, Germany pays the bill. We've got the aid for Syria, 17 billion for Afghanistan, and 15 billion for Palestine reconstruction. So it's checkbook diplomacy. Germany has nothing to say, but they're going to be footing the bill and signing checks. But there is a big gap in the budget. New debt being taken on, and the Chancellor wants people to work until the age of 70, increase taxes, and get rid of care for elderly people so that he can continue to dole out the cash outside Germany. It's not going to keep going like this. We're going to bring things back down to earth and ensure that we prioritize national policy.
Mr. López-Iturriz, you have the floor.
The horrible terrorist attacks of the 7th of October, we honor the memory of the victims, and we say that we want the hostages back home in Israel. While European politicians were picking sides, using the pain of the Palestinian and the Israeli people for their political games, on the other side of the Atlantic, President Trump was engaged in serious talks trying to negotiate the terms of a peace plan that could bring a new era of progress and prosperity for the Middle East. That same person who in his first mandate, while many in Europe were criminally silent about it, was working for the normalization of relations between the Arab countries and Israel through the Abraham Accords. This peace plan brings to the table the possibility for a stable ceasefire which will put an end to the suffering of millions of civilians in Gaza, including the much-needed access to humanitarian aid. It will also allow the return of hostages to their families. It will create a solid foundation for peace and the implementation of the two-state solutions by removing the terrorist organization Hamas from the equation. I know it's difficult for Greta Thunberg and the Barbie Spanish of Gaza and so on, and on those boats, screaming and partying in front of the cameras. So is over. No more excuses for socially accepted anti-Semitic behavior. The Arab countries in the region, are very much aware that further confrontation is not the solution. Normalization, dialogue and trade is. They seek peace and progress. Let us Europeans do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. López-Iturriz. La señora Corrado.
Colleagues, we are having a debate here in the Hemicycle. Meanwhile, in Gaza, there is a humanitarian disaster. It is not something that has to take place. It is political decisions, criminal acts, shelling, bombing, deportations without any safe space. Hunger used as a weapon of war. This parliament, these institutions cannot pretend like there's not an ongoing genocide that has been denounced by the UN. We can no longer fail to hear the millions of citizens that have taken to the streets in recent days. The responsibility of the Israeli government cannot be hidden by aiding and abetting through silence. And in fact, we are on thin ice with this peace plan promoted by the U.S. Fine, we must look for any way forward, any diplomatic act. Yes, we should look to those, but we cannot have illusions. Peace cannot be from the top down. We must listen to the voice of the Palestinian people without recognizing Palestine, without a political process that puts an end to the illegal occupation. Any agreement will be fragile, and we won't be able to uproot the root causes. We must silence the arms, assist the Palestinians, free the Israeli hostages immediately. No one believes that there's any acceptable way to proceed otherwise. Aid must be guaranteed with safe channels, credible institutions, the foundation of the international community. This is precisely what the GSF was trying to achieve. It was illegally intercepted in international waters with hundreds of European civilians, activists, all on board. They were held and mistreated. Europe must stop its complicity. It must silence the arms. It must put an end to the association agreement, free the hostages, and give a body to a two-state solution. insecurity for lasting peace. And I conclude, the best way to honor the 67,000 victims, as well as the victims of the vile Hamas attacks on this date 2 years ago. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Dutch, you have the floor.
Két éve a Hamas
2 years ago, Hamas terrorists broke into Israel and attacked innocent people without any discretion. They killed entire families, women, infants, children. This is the bloodiest attack against Jews since the Holocaust. The world was shaken. We have to call this devilish act what it is. Hamas is a cruel terrorist organization fighting not for its people, but for its own power. Its objective is to kill the Jews. They are hiding behind civilians. They are starting rockets from behind schools and hospitals. They have flooded the world with Hamas propaganda, with manipulative reports from what's happening. This is a fake news campaign turning the victim into the perpetrator and vice versa. In reality, Israel is engaging in rightful self-defense. It's fighting against terrorism, against manslaughter. Whoever questions this is on the side of terrorists.
Guarda from the Greens, do you accept it? Madame Guarda, you have 30 seconds.
Grazie infinite. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. You spoke of the very serious terrorist attack. You talked about Hamas. You talked about the evil committed by Hamas. But what about what Netanyahu said in 2019 in a public conference of your party? He says, whoever wants to put an obstacle and I'll start again. Whoever wants to stop the creation of a Palestinian state needs to support the strengthening of Hamas, the transfer of public money to Hamas. That is part of our strategy, that is to isolate the Palestinians of Gaza and to support Hamas. So what is your view on that? What is your view on that? Thank you.
Ask Mr. Dutch.
Engedje meg, tisztelt.
Dear colleague, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that 2 years ago, what happened shook everybody in the world. The Hamas terrorists broke into Israel, killed more than 1,000 people in a barbarian act of slaughter. Israel is fighting against this terror organization by act of its self-defense, and I think we are obliged to support such an effort.
Presidente.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, the peace plan of the United States is an attempt, a specific attempt to create development in the Gaza Strip. The European Union needs to support this pragmatically. As was said by Mrs. von der Leyen, Europe is prepared to contribute with political and economic resources and humanitarian resources. And this should make it possible for there to be peaceful coexistence between two states based on non-violence and reciprocal recognition. The Italian government has also indicated a very clear line. Hamas cannot play a single role in the future government of Gaza. But it should also be possible to avoid that the suffering of the Palestinian people is not instrumentalized for ideological reasons. The path towards peace in Gaza is difficult, but today we see a ray of light and hope. to give civilians a safe future and a life in dignity. Thank you.
Mr. Andrews, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Commissioner colleagues. October the 7th must be repeatedly and unambiguously condemned. I wish to share my sympathy with the bereaved families, with the injured and those taken hostage. The response that followed, aimed at wiping out Hamas, soon warped into a policy of regional vandalism, bombing and occupying neighbours, thrilling in the awesome power of it all, seemingly possessed of a drunken self-confidence. The sickening policy that sees children being killed by AI drones, by IDF snipers and being starved to death, as acknowledged by President von der Leyen, is not his strategy. Rather, it is an aimless display of military prowess. So much of the current Israeli leadership are so in awe of this that statesmanship, vision and a genuine desire for peace are not valued. So let us genuinely hope that this peace process can lead to an end to violence, for peace and security for Palestinians and Israelis alike, and that the EU can play its role in ensuring that there is a pathway to self-determination for the people of Palestine. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much. La signora Scuderi.
Ms. Scuderi.
Oggi 7 ottobre.
The 7th of October, the anniversary of a bloody attack. Yes, I condemn without any problem. But if you took up the 10th and the 11th of October, after 2 years of a Palestinian ethnic cleaning genocide, we are not doing anything to stop Israel. And not even talking about the flotilla, unless you really think about the rights of Europeans, your colleagues. How can this chamber do something for the Palestinian people? President von der Leyen yesterday stated that Europe must remain united to remain alive. I say that Europe is dying in silence in being an accomplice in this institution. And in Europe, there are millions that are on our streets that are screaming, not on our behalf, asking for justice, asking for peace, that they don't want to repeat the errors of the past, and they are against genocide. We stand with that Europe, with the Palestinian people that is oppressed. Now is the time to implement the values that we state we defend. Otherwise, you will be hypocrites. We will stand in the streets, on those boats, with humanity, because it is there that humanity continues to exist. Otherwise, it will die.
Monsieur Botenga.
Président, Madame la Commissaire.
Madam Commissioner, President, I think one thing was missing from your speech, sanctioning Israel. Why did you not sanction Israel 2 years on? The International Criminal Court has called for it, specifically said that there is complicity from third countries if we continue to fund and finance Israel. But right now, the European Union finances Israel through research funds, military funds, the European Investment Bank, the space program, and so on. And there's no sanctioning of Israel. The only demand I heard from Ms. Callas is governing Gaza. You're saying that the European Union should have its place in the transitional governing body. What, together with Blair? With Donald Trump? That's colonialism. And what we're hearing from the Commission is this recycling of colonial ideas to suggest that it's not up to the Palestinians, but other countries to govern the territory. I'd like you to really go back to the drawing board, do your homework and come back here and say that you're going to sanction Israel, because otherwise you'll be accomplice to the worst forms of war crime.
It's seat 510, Mr. Coles.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Botenga, your colleague Boylan in her speech mentioned the necessity to provide aid, humanitarian aid. We know there's legal reasons for sea blockade. for obvious reasons, and let alone last week there were almost 1,500 aid trucks sent into Gaza. But could you please elaborate, and have you asked your colleague who apparently were detained by Israeli defense forces, what was the reason for MEP Hassan and others to toss their mobile phones over the board into the sea? What's so incriminating in her phones where that they had to do such a thing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. You can answer now.
Yes, first of all, please go back and study international law before you mention it. There's a right of free passage, especially for humanitarian aid. So go study and don't come like you waste our time with this kind of ridiculous questions. Secondly, regarding to phones, you have one state that has been spying, has been developing software to spy on Europeans, right? That is committing a genocide in Gaza. Would you hand over all of your private data to them? No, you wouldn't. No one would. So rather than accuse the humanitarians, as you generally do, start accusing the genocidal maniacs that are today in Israel and that are killing Palestinians. But no, you want to shoot on the boats with humanitarian aid. Go shame yourself.
Уважаеми колеги, за 2 години...
Colleagues, for over 2 years, the European institutions did nothing to alleviate the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza. This lack of action is one of the reasons for the death of 10,000s of Palestinian women, kids, and adults. The main responsible person for those things that a lot of people call genocide is the government of Benjamin Netanyahu, but the responsibility is also falls to the so-called civilized Europe. While the elites in Brussels were afraid to say anything, the normal European citizens were strong in their support to those suffering in Gaza. There were tens of thousands of people on the streets of Rome, London, Barcelona, Dublin, Amsterdam, and Sofia. The leaders of Europe were afraid that they will be called out on the basis of anti-Semitism, but Jews throughout the world are not the same as the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. You can like Jews and not like this government. Our citizens understand this, but our leaders seem not to understand this. Thank you.
The next speaker is Mr. Papadakis.
Καταδικάζουμε την πειρατική επίθεση ενόπλων Ισραηλινών δυνάμεων σε διεθνή...
We condemn the attack of the Israelis on international waters against international law, and also the bad way they treated the people in the flotilla. The European Union and the Greek government, they promoted the strategic alliance with the State of Israel and covered its behavior. And the Trump plan they support, which is on the detriment of the rights of the Palestinian people. They want to create an American protectorate in Gaza and as a police force to use Israel. The crucial thing is humanitarian aid to reach to the hands of the Palestinians. Your hands off the Palestinian people, and we should show solidarity to them so that workers at ports show that in Europe, because they block Israeli military cargo. We should stop hunger. We shouldn't associate with Israel. We need a free, independent Palestine, united in the borders before June 1967, with capital Eastern Jerusalem.
Please, Mr. Kalla.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, on the second anniversary of Hamas' terrorist attack on Israel, we strongly support the ongoing efforts to put an end to this war, to liberate the remaining hostages, to finally end the grip of Hamas on Gaza for all future time to come, and to stop the suffering of the innocent civilian population in the Gaza Strip. We need immediate access for all available humanitarian assistance by all those organizations that have proven that they can deliver on the ground. Disarming Hamas, dismantling its structures will secure that humanitarian aid will reach those in need. But our EU role must go beyond providing humanitarian assistance. We must, on the one hand, be prepared to agree to participate in an international administration that organizes security and reconstruction in Gaza. I cannot suggest to Israel to continue its military presence inside Gaza, but suggesting that also requires a robust international presence and mandate, including us. In parallel, we need to push for an inclusive peace process that ultimately leads to a two-state solution, a secure state of Israel and a viable Palestinian state. On the way, Israel must stop its settlement policy in the West Bank, and I hope that also in this regard, Donald Trump and the European Council will find proper arguments to convince the Israeli government that this is also in the long-term interest of Israel. I also wish the Palestinian population to get the chance to elect a legitimate leadership after the last elections dating from 2005 and 2006. Together, they can find a solution, hopefully.
Mr. Gala, you have a blue card from Mr. Shell from ESN that has already taken the floor in this debate. Do you accept it?
Or cannot ask a blue card.
No, the rules allowed them to ask to take a blue card, but it's up to you to accept.
To our German extremists, I don't give extra speaking time.
Thank you, Mr. Gala, dear colleague. Our next speaker is Mr. Maniatis. You have the floor.
My dear colleagues, 2 years after the terrorist attack of Hamas against Israel, pain and unhappiness continues. The relatives of the hostages are still waiting for their return. Gaza has been flattened. 67,000 Palestinians, out of them more than 20,000 children, have lost their lives. From the first moment, we recognize the right of Israel to defend itself. But this does not give Israel the right to ignore international law, excluding, isolating Gaza, using hunger as a weapon, and committing, according to the United Nations, genocide acts. The talks that began on Sunday in Egypt are opening some framework for hope for peace in the region. An agreement that would lead to stop the isolation of Gaza, a ceasefire, a freedom for the hostages, and will open the road for sustainable peace, an Israel that is free and secure, and a Palestinian state that is sustainable and democratic in the borders of 1967. Unfortunately, the Netanyahu government has stated openly that it's contrary to the perspective of an independent Palestinian state. The promotion of the legal settlements, especially the Plan E1, has this aim to cancel on the field a sustainable Palestinian state. The recognition of Palestine is not a gift to Hamas. It confirms our belief in the solution of two states. That's why we call upon all the member states to move in that responsible act to recognize the State of Palestine. We need a strategy for the Middle East. We cannot be spectators seeing an open wound for humanity that's so close to us. And it's not allowed to us just to pay money without participating in forming the conditions in an area of the world that concerns us directly. We should be present in the reconstruction of Gaza with a special fund. We should support the efforts of the Arab states for peace and to assure that Hamas will have no role to play in the transitional government or any other government in Gaza or the West Bank. Thank you.
Very much, dear colleague, Monsieur Lejari.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Well, today, with sadness, is the second anniversary of the massacre perpetrated by terrorists from Hamas and other armed forces. We need to look at the facts. Today, in Gaza, truth is covered by words. Well, we talk about genocide, but we see people that have been taken hostage by Hamas, a terrorist organization not prepared to accept a ceasefire and turns hunger into a weapon. we hide behind symbolic gestures. It is not very clear to who threatens this peace. The Union does not speak clear. Hamas chooses war rather than life. Europe must stop pretending, and it must be very clear on its position. Protection of civilians will never be guaranteed as long as terrorism plays a role in the Middle East. Thank you.
My next speaker is Mr. Coles.
Dear colleagues, you don't have to be pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian, but you should be pro-fact. We must not confuse immediate conflict management with long-term political solutions. The peace plan is a response to war. It outlines tactical steps: ceasefire, humanitarian aid, hostage release. A two-state solution may sound noble, but what is being built? A state with no functioning institutions, no elections in nearly 2 decades, and a systematic corruption? This plan does not create a Palestinian state. It explicitly rules out Hamas, as it must. No serious state can emerge under shadow of terrorist organization. Rebuilding Gaza will take at least a decade. The question is not only who pays, but who leads and guarantees the process. Because it certainly cannot and should not be the European Union. Regional countries, Egypt, Jordan, the Gulf, must take responsibility. Peace cannot be outsourced, nor can it be financed endlessly by Europe. The EU's role must be principled, realistic, and conditional, tied to regional ownership and genuine reform. Anything else is wishful thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. The next speaker is Mr. Kyuchuk.
Thank you, President. Madam Commissioner, today we cannot afford to speak about Gaza with some empty words, the same empty words that the world has been uttering for tens of years. While people are dying and the humanitarian crisis is growing in front of our eyes. Over the last days, thousands of people poured into the streets of European cities from Barcelona to Sofia to show that human life cannot be a token traded among influences. We need to hear these Europeans. Many governments already took a very clear position, insisting on a truce and on access for humanitarian aid and on realistic efforts for peace, including the release of all hostages. However, until now, there are just a couple of initiatives that haven't received enough support. The European Union needs to fight for a sustainable peace within 2 countries, within 2 states, giving prosperity and freedom for all in these 2 states. Thank you. Благодаря.
As we speak, families in Israel mourn the victims of October 7 while hostages remain in captivity, enduring hell. As we speak, families in Gaza cannot grieve. More bombs are falling and settlers terrorize those in the West Bank. As we speak, Jews in Europe face anti-Semitic attacks, racism against Muslims is rising, and Palestinians worldwide wonder on which day their victims will be mourned. Dear colleagues, we all hope for a deal to end this suffering. But negotiations do not feed the starving. We need to increase pressure for more humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. And even if an agreement comes, our work will not be over. Rebuilding will need resources. Peace will need protection. Healing will need specialists. And justice will need accountability. Europe was too divided to pressure a ceasefire. Let us at least be united and lead to protect and nurture whatever fragile hope may soon emerge.
Thank you, Madam. La señora Montero tiene la palabra.
Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, President. How's your day going? What's more important in your schedule than to break the ties with the terrorist regime of Israel? We're seeing ships being arrested in international waters. What would have happened if Russia had been attacking NATO countries? And if this can happen with impunity, what's going to happen to Palestinians? We're talking about medicines not reaching. That's terrorism. 680,000 dead, 18,000 children killed, people being smothered by bombs. But nothing's been happening here. We've seen dogs attacking people, sleep deprivation, sexual violence, and what's going on here? Nothing. We're seeing a colonization plan being supported. It's an illegal plan. It doesn't recognize the rights of Palestinians and their right to self-determination. It's time to break ties with Israel, economic ties, trade deals, reject the Trump plan, and respect international law. Otherwise, you will be going down in history as complicit with genocide and Israel.
You have the floor.
President, well, Gaza is the hell on earth. Children are starving, the cities are bombed, a humanitarian situation is destroyed. That's the reaction of Israel. Over 1,000 people have been tortured, massacred, hostages taken. There is terror on the two sides. Trump's plan could release the hostages, could establish a peace. No persecution of Palestinians, but a two-state solution. That is correct. For us, European, there is one thing that's important, stability in the Middle East, because we are the ones who are going to be paying the bill, the consequences, mass immigration, terror. That is what we don't want. So therefore, the Palestinians cannot possibly be persecuted and forced to leave their land. So we believe that the Palestinians need to have their own state, but in Palestine, not in Europe. So that is the plan, Trump's plan. That is what we need to support, because an incompetent and impotent Europe can't do anything else. Thank you.
Madam Yoncheva, you have the floor.
President, colleagues, the new peace plan of President Trump gives us real hope that the war in Gaza will be over. There are specific steps for the release of the hostages, the exchange of prisoners, Hamas, and the way the international community can support the rebuilding of Gaza. All the parties are at the table to negotiate, and this is the first time we see real progress supported by other key states in this region. I support this plan, and I urge Hamas to accept it as well. Now we need to choose peace instead of destruction. And I call on the European Commission to come up with your own set of proposals and to have a more active role in this process. We need to do more, because even after we have peace, Europe will be needed. Europe will be needed in order to protect the civilians and to support the rebuilding and reconstruction of Gaza. Thank you.
Honorable Salini.
Thank you, President. The evil sown by Hamas and terrorism since '87, so a long time before the 7th of October and culminating in the 7th of October, merits a reaction. But that reaction cannot be a new type of occupation of the Gaza Strip, because annexing the Gaza Strip or plan thereto would just be fertile ground for new evil to be born. So yes, we welcome a plan for an agreement, a peace agreement, as proposed by the U.S. administration. However, it's not enough. And I'd like to thank the Commissioner for having raised this point. we have a further task. That agreement, yes, will lead to a arms block and a block to war, but it won't lead to peace, because for peace we need policy, politics, dialogue amongst cultures, religions, and countries. And I think that we should take up the Cardinal's words in a recent interview, stating that there's a need for an individual to recognize another individual through their culture and through their humanity. That is peace. Peace is generated when an individual accepts that that individual is not the only victim, but accepts to see the pain of the other. And that is really where Europe, if it wants to play the role of politics, will have to begin. Thank you.
Presidente, señora comisaria, today marks 2 years of terrorist attack of Hamas that took the life of 1,200 people and condemns the family of 250 hostages to despair. I want to convey our solidarity with the families of the hostages that are with us today. Believe us, we want more than anything hostages to be released, peace and security within two-state solution for Israel and Palestine. In this already declared genocide by the United Nations, not only we are seeing the far-right government of Netanyahu killing more than 77,000 Palestinians, but destroying the last resort of democracy in Israel. Israelis are protesting in the street. The world is protesting to end the suffering and the impunity in Gaza. Believe me, we need to end the occupation of Palestine, the occupation in the West Bank. We need to have access for the Palestinians to humanitarian aid. We need a democratic transition in a Palestinian state where Palestinians have an active role. We are not against of Israel. We are not against of Israel, I repeat this many times, because we are calling and defending the right of Palestinians to have their own state. Peace is not merely the absence of war, but is the presence of justice. Let's avoid double standards, as we have been reflecting always in this Parliament, and fight for what is right. We need the implementation of international law and international humanitarian law. And if we are not in the right side of history, we will be regretting all our lives. Every day it passes, many Palestinians are being killed, and we have an uncertainty of the future of each one of the hostages that are being held still by Hamas. So I call here for peace and for the implementation of an international humanitarian law that brings peace for both states. But we need to be clear in and reaffirm our state and our position with what is right, justice and security for each one of them, not for one side, but for both. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Jorge Martin Frias for 1 minute, please.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam. On the 7th of October 2023, 1,200 people were killed by Hamas, children who saw how their parents were being killed and then killed themselves, and trophies were shown. 251 hostages were taken. The entire world saw that how we celebrated this death on some of our squares, and we see that the truth has been manipulated, representing the victims as those perpetrating the killing and the other way around. So the most recent resolution, which we voted, only had one truth. Hamas started the war. Hamas is responsible for the death in Gaza, which we lament. And Hamas can put an end to the war if it releases the hostages. And if it is only thanks to the generosity of Israel, and I repeat, generosity of Israel, and thanks to the peace plan of Trump, Israel that deserves a peace.
Speaker is Marcos Guata for 1 minute, please.
Signor Presidente.
President, colleagues, the plan proposed by President Trump is the only light at the end of the tunnel of a conflict that has lasted since the 7th of October, much pain. And Italy and Giorgia Meloni support this because it's the only way to lasting peace and to put an end to this absurd war. We have to accept that the tragedy started with Hamas, but we also cannot close our eyes to the response of Israel, which was disproportionate and unacceptable. Therefore, Europe has a duty to support the peace plan and not get distracted by dangerous and instrumental steps like the flotilla that doesn't assist the Palestinian people. It takes advantage of their suffering to raise awareness, and it makes no sense in Italy or Europe. So we must accept responsibility, peace, and not taking advantage of pain.
Next speaker is Ms. Abir Al-Zalani for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Today we are thinking about the victims of the terrorist attack on the 7th of October and their families. Peace is needed, and it has been needed for the last 70 years. So let's talk about the peace plan then. And here I really need the Commission to listen, because this plan comes at a time when several international organizations and bodies of authority and human rights organizations have concluded that after 2 years of violence, the atrocities in Gaza meet the threshold for genocide. What are the risks with this plan then? First, it risks locking in impunity, because how can two parties that are deemed by the International Court of Justice being war criminals actually will lead to responsibility? Secondly, it risks to rewrite the responsibility of the attack, of what's going on. Thirdly, the outcome will be for the powerful ones and not for the victims. Fourth, the gains that are won on the battlefield will be permanent political gains. We all know that there cannot be peace without justice.
Thank you.
Because it's very much needed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Munir Satouri for 1 minute, please.
2 ans après le 2 years after the 7th of October, we pay our respects to the victims of the massacre, the hostages still being held, and the family members who are still waiting. Our commitment for their release is total, but we've seen the instrumentalization of the suffering of family members, and they've neglected this in order to adopt the eradication of the Palestinian people. Now, we're talking about a so-called peace plan without the Palestinians, and we're seeing colonization being pursued. How can we talk about peace when international law is being trampled on, when we are seeing genocide unfolding in front of our eyes? It's documented and undeniable. A life is a life, and if we neglect this, then we are saying goodbye to our humanity. We cannot be complacent. We cannot close our eyes to this. Let us not forget the need for sanctions, and we can.
The next speaker is Katarina Martins for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. Well, what we can currently see, Europe is purchasing from Arab countries, and Palestinians, meanwhile, are dying. Gaza is the trial area for the industry of death. This is not a planned peace that we have. The Trump and Netanyahu plan, Tony Blair would be a member, and there would be full impunity. This is a war plan, and it is the end of humanitarian and international law. Europe must condemn, and meanwhile, it does the opposite. In my country, we saw there were F-35s that were sent to Israel with the permission of the Portuguese government. We need to have effective action to send our fleets with humanitarian aid to Gaza, to put an end to genocide, and to bring those responsible of war crimes to account. And that's the only way to credibility.
There's a blue card from Anna Miranda Paz. Do you want to take it? Yeah. Thank you. Seat 186, please.
Señora Martins.
Ms. Martins, do you believe that the flotilla that was going to Gaza was really supported by the European Union?
Thank you very much for the answer. Now, I am sure that the European Union didn't do what it should have done. The European Union does not do what it should to support the GSF. We know that there are Frontex boats that could have assisted and accompanied the flotilla boats to bring the humanitarian aid that was needed. The European Union did not do what it should have done to defend the flotilla. And it shouldn't have accepted the criminal detention in international waters and the inhumane treatment of those who were trying to bring the assistance. Now, I know that the European Union did not do what it should have done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleague. Thank you. It is a very important topic, and there's a lot of people who want to take the floor, so we need to respect the speaking time. The next speaker is Mr. Phidias Panayotou for 1 minute, please.
Finally, we have a peace plan for Gaza after millions of citizens across the world took the streets and put pressure to their governments. Even though this is overall good news, we still need to be very careful. This is because we shouldn't forget that the creators of this peace plan are Trump and Netanyahu. These are the same people who are still committing the biggest genocide of the 21st century against the Palestinians. The same people who are absolutely opposed to a two-state solution. The same people that might be ready to start a new colonial time in Gaza if this peace plan is not implemented properly. So our role as the European Union should be to keep pressuring the governments of Israel and the United States to respect all the points of the peace plan and make sure that the final result is the long-awaited two-state solution. I love you all.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Alice Teodorescu-Move for 1 minute, please.
7 oktober tog aldrig slut, inte för dem som mördade.
Well, October doesn't end, not for those who've been killed, those who've been taken hostage, and those who are holding their breath to waiting for one of their loved ones to come home, possibly in a body bag. The peace plan, which President Trump has developed and supported by Turkey and the Arab countries, is the only option. Hostages need to be released, disarmament of Hamas, and a new security force for Gaza, supported by the world. The European Union needs to support the existence of the two peoples and at the same time to remove terrorism, remove the ideological ground for terrorism, because Gaza must go through exactly the same process as Germany after Nazism, because if not, other radical forces will take over under new reasons. Those who are against this agreement because they don't want to speak about Hamas, they're hypocrites. They feel that peace is only possible when the Palestinians hate more than the Hebrews. Thank you.
Speaking time. The next speaker is Evin Insir for 2 minutes, please.
I am at the loss for words to express my outrage at the passivity of the EU to put an end to the genocide in Gaza and to bring home the Israeli hostages. 2 years have passed. Passivity is complicity. By refusing to suspend the EU-Israeli Association Agreement and rejecting calls for a weapon embargo, the EU is choosing complicity over conscience. Now, regarding the so-called peace efforts, all peace efforts must be welcomed. But there is no genuine peace effort when those most affected are excluded. The extremist Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right ministers have made it clear that they will not allow Palestinian Authority to have a role in Gaza. True peace cannot be achieved by excluding the Palestinians, while Hamas must not be part of the governance in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority must be, if the peace efforts are to be genuine and credible. Let us also remember the old saying, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with conflict by peaceful means. The people of the West Bank understand this deeply. They try to pursue peace through non-violent means, even when an ethnical cleansing is unfolding before our eyes in the West Bank, with the Israeli military and settlers terrorizing Palestinians day and night. The EU must take a stand for real peace resolution. That means ceasefire now. That means humanitarian aid into Gaza now. That means the immediate release of all hostages, both Israeli and Palestinian. That means an immediate end to the siege of Gaza. That means an end to the occupation of all Palestinian territories. That means recognition of Palestine. That means full respect for international law.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Irena Joveva for 1 minute, please.
Now or never. Not tomorrow, not next week, now or never. This is the moment for everyone who still defends the atrocities committed by the State of Israel in Palestine to prove that there remains, somewhere inside, I hope, a spark of humanity. Sure, I welcome Trump's ceasefire plan, but only barely, and only because it is less grotesque than the so-called Middle Eastern Riviera plan that he had. But where in this plan are the mechanisms for protection of Palestinian people and provisions safeguarding their further displacements? And instead of unification of Gaza Strip and West Bank, there is de facto separation of the two. And also, let's be honest, plans alone do not bring justice. Words do not stop bombs, speeches do not feed starving children. The international community has failed to act when it mattered most, so it must not fail now with holding Israel accountable. So I say again, colleagues, now or never. Let us prove that we are not just commentators or just witnesses to tragedy, to a genocide. Now or never to stand on the side of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Tineke Streek for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Chair, Council, Commissioner. Across Europe, record numbers of people have taken to the streets. Rome 1 million, Madrid 400,000, Amsterdam 250,000, Berlin, Barcelona 100,000. Hundreds of vessels sailed to Gaza to break the unlawful humanitarian blockade. Evident opinion polls express people's frustration. So all over Europe, we see an unprecedented disconnect between the people and politicians, because they simply reject that their leaders and the EU remain silent and even facilitate the genocide in Gaza and the ethnic cleansing in the West Bank. This is in no way compliant with international law, in no way leading to peace, in no way what European citizens want. Our citizens don't allow you any longer to cowardly hide behind Trump or even ongoing negotiations. We need to go all out to stop the genocide, to enforce international law and include the Palestinians in any decision about their own land.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Danilo Della Valle for 1 minute, please.
Grazie. Thank you. We want to help Palestine. Palestine is shaking our consciousness. I met someone, an activist in Rome, during a demonstration, millions of people in the squares, and I'd like to thank all of them and the 400 activists that went on the flotilla. Some of them were our colleagues, and they are demonstrating to support the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, you continue to be complicit in the terrorist state of Israel by standing in silence with trade agreements, with military trade, with Netanyahu, and supporting Trump's plan for Gaza. It seems that it was written by a noble in the 19th century. Not a minimum amount of input from the Palestinian people about their land or their future. And they are continuing to be second-class citizens. And so we stand with those who have gone to the streets to try to save the honor of the Western world. And what we realized is just what we were able to do. Someday we will look back and ask ourselves where we were during this genocide, and you will realize you were complicit. Free Palestine.
Speaker is Lucas Folas for 1 minute, please.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, my country, Cyprus, is just 200 miles from Gaza, and from our houses we can see the missiles at night. We are the closest to the battlefield, and our responsibility in the humanitarian sector is huge. We have done what was possible for human suffering at our doorstep. We have been doing that for 2 years. We condemn the terrorism of Hamas, and we have defended the right of Israel to self-defense. At the same time, we cannot close our eyes when we have tens of thousands of victims. A ceasefire must take place straight away, and all hostages have to go back home. There has to be access to humanitarian aid that is needed by this area. At the same time, I am concerned because different players determine progress in the area, and the European Union is not playing the leading role. The European Union has to lead and not follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ms. Kathleen van Brandt for 1 minute, please.
Dank u wel, voorzitter.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council. 2 years have elapsed, and we are witnesses to the cruelty that is taking place in the Gaza Strip and the action taken by Hamas and the Israeli government. We need to be realistic. The peace plan is still far removed, certainly far removed from the creation of a Palestinian state. Daily, people are dying in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank. So I don't think the Commission should stop taking action. Yes, I think the trade agreement needs to be interrupted. We need to introduce sanctions against the extreme right government of Netanyahu. And we need to make sure that we contribute to this peace process. We want a sustainable peace. We want a two-state solution with a Palestinian state and the recognition of the right of the Palestinians to have a future. But there are many Europeans, especially in Amsterdam, who have demonstrated the Commission needs to listen to its own people. So take action.
Speaker is Billy Kelleher for 1 minute, please.
On the anniversary of October 7th, we must remember the 1,200 people killed, the 251 hostages taken by Hamas, a terrorist organisation. We now need a ceasefire, a release of all hostages and humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza. And we need to support a two-state solution and a peace plan. But let us be under no illusions. This conflict did not start in the last number of years. This has been ongoing for decades. The continual undermining and encroaching of the Palestinian territories by Israel has been continually allowed by this institution and many others in the European Union. As I've said previously, Israel acts with impunity because we have granted it immunity. It is absolved from all its obligations under international law, under basic decency and humanity. And it continues to flout. And we continue to bow our head and pretend we don't see. It is a shameful, shameful stain on this Parliament and on the institutions that make up the European Union. We have to act and stand in solidarity, support a two-state solution and insist that Israel is held accountable.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Anna Miranda Paz for 1 minute, please.
Escucha la Unión Europea.
The cries from the streets that are emanating from the towns of Santiago de Compostela to Amsterdam, and do they reach Brussels? No. Do we hear and support the people who are risking their lives to stop genocide on the flotilla? We're seeing genocide in Gaza being unchecked, and we need to have a stop to the passive reaction of President von der Leyen. It's complicity with genocide that's being committed by Netanyahu. We're seeing across Europe, in the cities of Europe, that people are ashamed of the European Union's position. And thousands of people being killed, children being killed, hospitals and schools being attacked. Is there any humanity left? Political policies, an arms embargo, sanctions against Israel, the State of Israel, not saying yes to Trump's plan. We cannot close our eyes to what is happening. Interruption from the President.
Very much, colleagues. Thank you. The next speaker is Lee Anderson for 1 minute, please.
2 vuotta kansanmurhaa.
2 years of genocide in Gaza, and now this peace is being discussed on the basis of a plan that repeats our historical mistakes by completely disregarding the Palestinians and their right to self-determination. Peace and a two-state solution cannot be achieved without the Palestinians' right to self-determination. It cannot come about without an end to illegal occupation. There are over 700,000 illegal settlers living in the occupied territories, but the EU has done nothing to put a stop to this, just as nothing has been done to stop the genocide, nor has anything been done when 500 activists were stopped and illegally detained in international waters. Almost 20,000 Finns signed a petition last week in support of them, but the Finnish government stayed silent. This is a historical shame for the EU.
The next speaker is Michael Sterber for 1 minute, please.
Pani Przewodnicząca, Pani Komisarz.
Madam President, Commissioner, today is the second anniversary of the 7th of October, the crime perpetrated by Hamas. And we must state as follows: we must end war, the dramatic consequences of war, and establish lasting peace in the Middle East. Hostages must come home. The families also have a right to bid farewell to those who lost their lives, and that is the responsibility of the international community, including the European Union. I have much hope when it comes to the peace plan from the U.S. It is a realistic plan that could mean sustainable peace, with an end to hostilities, the release of hostages, access to humanitarian aid in Gaza, where the situation is dramatic. It is a plan that would mean that we can rebuild the economy and establish a two-state solution. I should like to call on you to support this.
1 minute, please.
Thank you. Senhora Presidente, Senhora
President, Minister, Commissioner, the 7th of October, on this day, I address the victims of the terrible attacks from 2 years ago and the victims and hostages suffering in human conditions. Now, the fear and the anxiety amongst those who fear for their loved ones. We need also to talk about the reaction from Israel after 2 years of these dark times for Gaza. We're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. At last, there's a glimmer of hope for peace, and it's time to make that concrete. And the European Union must continue to play a leading role on the global stage and must be one of the key players. There seems to be no alternative to this plan, but it's right for us to say that this plan can bear the hallmarks of neocolonialism. And that's why we cannot support this plan wholeheartedly, and we must remain vigilant. Thank
Gebrandi for 1 minute, please.
Dank u, mevrouw de voorzitter.
Thank you, madam.
Commissaris. Zwarte dag van 7 oktober 2023. Een dag die zonnig en vrolijk begon, maar die eindigde met de dood van zeker 1200 onschuldige Israëliërs. En sinds die dag is het al 2 jaar oorlog, met vele tienduizenden, voornamelijk onschuldige Palestijnen tot gevolg. En hoewel ik het recht op zelfverdediging van Israël onderschrijf, is de reactie van Netanyahu volstrekt buitenproportioneel en onrechtmatig. En nu ligt er een plan voor vrede.
Sorry, there is no translation apparently. We will check it out and then you have a chance to start all over.
You don't understand my beautiful Dutch. What a pity.
No, unfortunately not. Does it work? Try again and then we will check it.
Shall I start again?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Dank u, mevrouw de voorzitter.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Well, today we see a very dark day, the 7th of October 2023, a day that was sunny and started with good weather, but 1,200 Israelis, innocent Israelis, were killed, and it's been 2 years of war with tens of thousands of innocent Palestinians dying. The right to self-defense is something I subscribe to by Israel, but Netanyahu's reaction is disproportionate and beyond the rule of law. There is a peace plan that is being prepared, but for the first time in 2 years, we can see a ray of hope that there is an end can be put to the bombing, that the hostages are finally released. But Europe cannot be seen. Europe needs to insist, however, that an agreement with the Palestinians needs to be reached, and not about the Palestinians. There is no peace. No peace can be signed without active participation of the Palestinians, because if not, that will be the only way to see a two-state solution. Thank you.
Is Saskia Brigmont for 1 minute, please.
Plan en 20 points colonial.
Well, a plan with a colonial plan of 20 points. The European Union here should act to stop the Israeli blockade and stop the genocide. Here we have a moral duty to act. It's an obligation as well, with sanctions against Netanyahu's government, who have then drawn all this attention by their actions. Millions of citizens have gone out on the streets to demand the end to the genocide and the occupation. The terrorist attacks by Hamas on the 7th of October will be indelibly marked in our memories forever, but we need to make sure that 2 years later, it's the Palestinians who are not paying the price for that. Thousands have died, millions are in danger, and we have the duty to protect them. It's something we have to do. The European Union has to make sure that peace applies to everyone.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Hannah Shedin for 1 minute, please.
May I start with a few words of thanks. Thank you to everyone who is on the flotilla. Thank you to the millions of people around the world who have taken to the streets, who are demonstrating. Thank you, because you've taken on the responsibility that the world leaders have failed to take on. You have been mocked for what you do in this chamber, but also from some governments, including the Swedish government. We're talking about genocide against Palestinians. And I think what's happening right now is going to go down in history. It is a betrayal, and it is unforgivable. We're actually witnessing genocide in real time. You can see it, I can see it, everybody in this chamber can see what's going on. Now we need to put the pressure on, even more on Israel. Even more people need to take to the streets. We need to have political sanctions against Israel. And those who are committing war crimes must be tried before the courts. Our purpose, our aim is to have a free Palestine that can grow out of this disaster. Thank you.
The next speaker is Davor Ivo Stier. For 1 minute, please.
Commissioner, let me first express my solidarity with the families of the victims and the hostages still held by Hamas. Today, 7th of October, we have to remember that Hamas, with a terrorist attack on Israeli citizens, started a new tragic chapter of war in the Middle East. Hamas cannot be rewarded for this. Hamas has to leave Gaza so that Palestinians can be free and Israel is safe. Hostages have to be released and negotiations from Egypt implemented. But solutions will not be reached by speeches, declaratory speeches here. We have to support the White House plan because this is the best chance for peace, for release of hostages, for ending the suffering, ensure safety of Israel, and ensure the right of Palestinians to be at home.
Matthias Nemec for 1 minute, please.
Spoštovani visoki zbor, posledice, ki jih je prinesla.
Colleagues, the atrocities committed on the October 7th 2 years ago will go down in human history as one of the darkest and most cruel periods perpetrated and allowed by our generation. Hamas' attack deserves all our condemnation, but Israel's disproportionate response to it, which continues to this day with relentless destruction of life in Gaza, is completely perverse and a grave crime against humanity. Peace negotiations are underway again these days, and they deserve our full support to bring back the hostages. My message is clear. The Union has a moral duty to recognise and act. The Holocaust is no excuse for decades of apartheid against the Palestinian people, and October the 7th is no excuse for the genocide in Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Nela Riel for 1 minute, please.
How can it be? How can it be that we actually talk so little about the Palestinians, but we don't talk to them? You know, the 7th of October, obviously the massacre, it breaks my heart. And I think also about the pain that is created by this genocide. How can it be that in the German media for 2 years now, you know, what about the Israeli military, their image, their pictures are taken on without any questions. And what about the Palestinian voices? We don't hear them, not at all. Now we have a peace plan from Mr. Trump. You know, it's not a question of Palestinians being sovereign over their own land, their own territory. No, we're talking about some kind of advisory body. I think it's difficult to not think of colonialism in this context. So I really wonder, why is it that free self-determination isn't the very bedrock of this decision going forward? You know, we need to prove that justice is applicable to all. Yes, of course, negotiations provide us with a glimmer of hope, but even if the EU supports this, you can't actually have peace if you don't fix the other problems. Palestinians are entitled to their own land, their own territory, and an independent government for themselves. Thank you.
Speaker is Konstantinos Alvanitis for 1 minute, please.
Dear colleagues, today is a difficult day, a difficult anniversary. But did everything start 2 years ago, or is it 70 years ago? We all agree here that the Israeli hostages need to be liberated. Do we all agree? Because that is something we demand, just like we demand the release of all the freedom citizens who have been arrested and the release of the members of the Palestinian who are being held by Israel. Of course, you can sometimes, if you do not recognize Palestine, the occupation of Palestine or in the future of Ukraine. This is just a deal for you. Just like the plan Trump for Gaza. Is Trump going to bring freedom to Gaza? Where is the UN Security Council? Where is the EU with its own peace proposal? is Mr. Blair going to guarantee safe and freedom in the area? For all these reasons, I think that all of the democratic forces need to join together.
Is Mr. Nicolas Pascual de la Parte for 1 minute, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. 2 years ago, there was a cruel, savage killing of Israelis. We've now seen suffering in Gaza in the meantime, and the US peace plan is now a ray of hope, and the EU and member states must unconditionally support it. It's the only viable, realistic scenario for putting an end to the suffering of Palestinians. It's complex, it's multi-stage, it's dependent upon various factors, but we need to support it right away. The Israeli government, Muslim and Arab states in the region, the UN, all support it. It is the only hope, as I say. International conflicts can be dealt with through diplomatic efforts, hard work by leaders who are willing to reach political compromises rather than engaging in stale rhetoric and absurd adoption of extreme positions which are unfruitful.
Alex Ayosaliba for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was proud, so proud yesterday when on the Maltese embassy for the first time I saw the Palestinian flag being raised, and we recognized formally as a country the Palestinian state. And at this stage, right now, this is important. Before we talk about a two-state solution, we have to appeal to all our member states to, as soon as possible, do so. And this is the clearest message: to recognize the Palestinian state, because it is important for the Palestinians to have a voice in all this and to find an equitable and fair solution after this humanitarian tragedy in Gaza, after the genocide that we've witnessed, the most brutal killing of children, young people, women, innocents in these last weeks, months, and even years. So it is truly important for us to see the Palestinians having a strong voice and to find a way ahead so that in the Middle East we have peace.
Thank you. The next speaker is Shyam Asens Lodra for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, this isn't a peace plan. This is a business plan for Trump, for his son-in-law, to then come after this genocide. He's going to turn it into a theme park. It's all rather macabre. But once again, it is just for business. And they're going to need cheap labour to build all of this. That's possible. Then an ultimatum to the survivors in the Gaza ghetto. Are you going to go along with this, or do you want to be wiped off the map? This is the way that totalitarian regimes like Nazism worked. But as a socialist, then we would have to then defend the law, defend NATO, defend human rights. This isn't justice. How can this be legitimate if there isn't any justice or reparations? And first of all, we need to start by carrying out the international arrest warrant on Netanyahu. We need to be doing what we've already put forward. We've already then provided half of the bombs, but we also have to repair that damage. It's a shame.
For 1 minute, please.
Every effort to bring about peace in Gaza is most welcome, but let us not fool ourselves. The Trump plan is designed on the basis of Israel's wishes, and it cannot remain so. The genocide that we are watching live cannot be forgotten, and also the implication of the US and the EU. If peace comes, it will be late by 2 years. Why is the massacre continuing? Why do the flotilla citizens are arrested? What are the guarantees offered by the Israel army? Is Trump going to continue the process? Is Blair going to support with his lies? You must remember what Ms. von der Leyen has promised. And most importantly, is the State of Palestine going to be recognized? Because the Israeli extremists, the hawkish members of the Netanyahu government say no. What do you say?
Celiana Sovko for 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Commissioner. Exactly 2 years ago, hundreds of innocent Israelis were brutally and tragically killed, raped, and taken as hostages. This horrific massacre was not a random act. It was a meticulously planned terrorist strategy aimed at erasing any possibility of coexistence between communities in the region. Hundreds of hostages were taken in acts reminiscent of medieval barbarism, shamefully broadcasted online with the intent to spread hatred and destroy any hope for peace in the Middle East. Those who call for the disappearance of Israel and those who reject the two-state solution are the only ones who benefit from such heinous crimes. Fortunately, President Trump has presented a peace plan which constitutes a crucial step towards building lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. This is our last real opportunity to end this conflict and to secure the safe release of the hostages. The European Union must take an active role in supporting the success of this plan and in laying the foundation for viable two-state solutions. I wish you good luck, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Chloe Riedel for 1 minute, please.
Chers collègues.
Colleagues, 2 years ago, 7th of October, Hamas attack, chilling, really chilling. And now I'm thinking about all the dead, the hostages, Israeli hostages, their families, and I'm also thinking of all those Israelis who are struggling for peace. For 2 years now, the European Union has been powerless. It's not put enough pressure on a genocidal Israeli government. It's just standing by. It's looking on. Donald Trump has come up with a peace plan. Let's put that in inverted commas, shall we, because we're far from peace at this juncture. The plan would allow for the Israeli hostages to be released. Could it also allow for famine to end in the Gaza Strip and no occupation of Gaza, in which case, yes, by all means, let's support it. But, this ceasefire, will it actually lead to any kind of relief for people in Gaza, Israelis? Not necessarily. What we want is justice for Palestinians, and for that to happen, European Union has to make a choice. It should be bold rather than complicit. It's important for us, therefore, to make sure that the Gaza Strip is not governed by non-Palestinian technocrats sent in by Trump. Also, when it comes to the association agreement between the EU and Israel, we need to suspend it. We need to have an embargo on weapons shipments. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rudi Kennes for 1 minute, please.
Dank u, voorzitter. Commissaris, wat is de rol?
Thank you, President. Commissioner, what has the EU done in terms of supporting peace negotiations in Gaza so far? Zero, zilch, nada. So far, we're hearing talk about colonial racism, very little hope that peace will actually be achieved. But a lot of EU leaders are willing to negotiate about the future of Palestine, but in the meantime, women and children are being killed. Children, babies, totally abandoned to their fate, even in incubators. So nothing, zilch, is being done for the Middle East. That is a struggle for survival. That is all we're left to witness now, that struggle. And it's been going on for 2 years. Our governments have said nothing, have not spoken out about a genocide, an ethnic cleansing. we should hold our heads in shame. History will not absolve us. No judge will forgive us.
David Gaza for 1 minute, please.
Grazie, signora Presidente.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. The humanitarian tragedy happening in Gaza is intolerable. We are all witnesses to the blatant breach of international law and of unprecedented cruelty. And this is all in retaliation of the terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. On that day, more than 1,000 innocent people were massacred. Hamas is still holding hostages to this day. This is, however, all too much. However, there is a ray of light. There's a peace plan proposed by the US government for the release of hostages, a plan for ceasing the attack on Gaza, and the shaping of a two-state solution so that Palestinians and Israelis can live peacefully side by side. Let us strive to ensure in this Parliament that this plan succeeds. But let us also ensure that there are consequences for whoever broke international law, so that this will never, but never occur again. Thank you.
Thies Reuten is the next speaker for 1 minute, please.
President, Commission, Council, colleagues, the Middle East and the innocent people of Israel and Palestine cannot endure yet another broken promise of peace, sabotaged by extremists from either side once again. And frankly, it saddens me deeply that the Trump plan is the closest to a peace proposal we've seen in years because of our own passivity. And close is not enough. Yes, Hamas must go. Hostages must be freed. But true peace requires ending Hamas's grip. And all those who say that as well in this room must realize that that means strengthening the Palestinian Authority and taking Palestinian self-determination seriously, not about Palestinians without Palestinians. A real two-state solution with the West Bank. Not a distant dream, but a decision now. An immediate ceasefire, humanitarian aid, fair reconstruction, and truth and accountability to heal and restore dignity. The cycle of terror, injustice, and inhumanity must end. And Europe can help, but only if we have one voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Fernando Barrena Arza for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. President Trump's plan to put an end to this conflict comes, too late. 60, 70,000 deaths too late. We've seen so many restrictions, humiliations imposed on the Palestinian side. And it seems to us that there is impunity for Israel and punishment only for Palestine. I don't think it would be acceptable for any other kind of conflict, for any other part of the world. It would not be acceptable. And therefore, maybe we'll be more holier than the Pope, but we're not convinced by this. Finally, we want to have a solution that is also valuable to the Palestinian side. We must put an end to the genocide against the people of Palestine, and we want such an agreement to be signed as soon as possible. We're a bit perplexed by the lack of initiatives taken by Mrs. Callas, our High Representative, in this area. It seems to me that there's no real measure in place here, an inaction, a lack of action. And it means that basically the EU has stood by whilst this mass killing goes on. There are those who want to maybe stop EU from being a global actor. Perhaps that is what we're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have closed the microphone so people can't hear you. The thing is that we have a lot of speakers also for Catch the Eye, and I want to take as many as possible. The more you stick to your speaking time, the easier it is for me to give more colleagues the floor. The next speaker is Wouter Beke for 1 minute, please.
Dank u wel, voorzitter, collega's.
Thank you very much, President, colleagues, Commissioner. 2 years ago, Hamas perpetrated an attack, a massacre of Israeli citizens, 1,200 people killed at a festival, in the streets, in their own homes. It's very clear that that is inhumane behaviour, and we must do our utmost to support any initiatives to put this to an end. The action does not justify what is occurring right now. Israel's response in Gaza has been disproportionate, even inhumane. tens of thousands of dead, families destroyed. We must clearly condemn that. I hope that the peace negotiations will come to a good conclusion. Anything that will end this madness will be welcome. We need guarantees of lasting peace, and we can only get that through a two-state solution in which Israel ceases to continue launching new settlements in the occupation of Palestine. We have to support this.
Metsola for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner. I am for peace in Gaza because this is a road to take immediately. Humanity must trump all the cynicism dominating global politics today. Unfortunately, extremists in our age have grown very strong, and the leaders seem to live in the past. It is important to have a durable peace with the release of all the hostages. Hamas is a terrorist organization and may not have any role in future in Palestine. However, the Israeli government with the political extremists does not want even to hear about any self-determination or a Palestinian state. Unfortunately, the EU has not passed this very important test. Our lack of unity, again, has caused our best values to fail here. The political responsibility of all member states has not come to the test of protecting the people of Gaza.
Please.
Commissioner. Today marks 2 years since Hamas's violent and brutal attacks on Israeli citizens and the taking of 251 hostages. We remember the victims and their families, as well as the innocent civilians of Gaza who continue to suffer as collateral in this conflict. Yesterday's talks in Egypt under President Trump's Gaza peace plan offered a glimmer of hope. The plan centres around urgency and immediate results. No doubt there is urgency. But enforced starvation, especially of little children, must never be used as a bargaining tool. Any plan must ensure a sustainable future in Gaza. I welcome the commitment to Gaza's redevelopment and Israel's withdrawal from the Strip, a vital step towards a ceasefire and a two-state solution. But we also need guarantees to stop annexation and settler violence in the West Bank, protect Palestinians from further harm and demand accountability for violations on both sides. True peace will only come when the hostages are released, both peoples are treated with equal dignity, equal security and equal rights. The sooner the better.
Thank you very much. And the next speaker is Ayan Uriodan for 1 minute, please.
Europe, the world's greatest peace project, must not stand by as Trump and Netanyahu design a toxic plan for Palestine. Europe must take inspiration from the humanity of the summit flotilla, not the cowering submission of President von der Leyen. Her failure of leadership is why I will support Thursday's motion of censure from the left. We must return to the vision of a two-state solution where the national aspirations of Palestinians and Israelis can coexist, and never again fall to the depths of Hamas depravity of October 7th or the monstrous actions of the Israeli apartheid regime over generations and the genocide of the last 2 years. Israel rejects the concept of a Palestinian state, which is why we must stand for it and lead international isolation of Israel until that happens, on every level, diplomatic, cultural, economic and sporting. FIFA must ban Israel. Europe must sanction Israel now.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Now we have reached Catch the Eye. I have too many speakers, but I will take as many as possible. I will do it based on presence during the debate and based on the order of when you ask for Catch the Eye. And we will begin with Daniel Attard, seat 383, please.
Dear colleagues, the very title of this debate exposes the sorry state of our Union, reduced to an observer on the global stage. We were first in line for the photo, but once again we were last when it comes to global policy. We even heard colleagues today shamelessly attacking humanitarian efforts, ridiculing the Sumut flotilla, parroting Netanyahu instead of defending our shared European values. Yes, we welcome every peace effort. Yes, we condemn the terrorist attacks by Hamas, and yes, we demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. But colleagues, no agreement will erase the war crimes committed in Gaza. No agreement will bring back a future to the thousands of murdered innocent children. Of course, we want peace, but equally we want justice, because there is no lasting peace without justice. The EU must stop reducing itself to an observer, and we must stand up for our own values, insist on compliance with international law, enforce sanctions and enforce our own treaties.
Thank you. Colleagues, catch the eye is 1 minute, and the more you stick to the speaking time, the more people I can give the floor. The next speaker is Silvia Sardone, seat 699, please.
La Commissione Europea attraverso
The European Commission spokesperson service has said that it supports the flotilla, recognising the humanitarian efforts of the activists. But what humanitarian assistance has actually been provided? There's about half a lorry's worth, so no real attempt at humanitarian aid. This was a purely media-orientated event. No child in Gaza was helped by it. To be quite honest, many of the participants in the mission are actually opposed to Trump's action plan, whereas almost everyone else is in favour worldwide. So the Commission has expressed support for people who say free Palestine from the river to the sea. In other words, destruction of Israel, supporters of Hamas.
Seat 210, please.
President, Trump did what the left never achieved. His peace plan for the Middle East brought the first concrete step towards peace. Let's be honest, dear left wing. What was more useful to the Palestinians? The symbolic recognitions of the State of Palestine made in haste and the leftists' influencers' performance trips, or Trump's concrete diplomacy? It must hurt, but Trump won this battle. The US didn't need to recognize the State of Palestine to promote peace. They didn't start complaining on sanctioning Israel opposite to the European Union and von der Leyen. The US knew that there's only one way to end the war, by pressurizing the terrorist organization Hamas to peace. Europe must now provide its full support to this plan. Terrorists must be removed from Gaza. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Oihane Agirigiotia Martinez, seat 253, please.
Today, we're here and we've talked about the atrocious attack by Hamas 2 years ago, but then also, of course, the completely disproportionate retort by Netanyahu. Violations of human rights, genocide, human lives lost. The people deserve a peace plan that actually works. We want humanitarian aid, the release of hostages, laying down of weapons, recognising the two states, and also reconstruction. Hamas and Israel have this in their hands. It's up to them to make this dialogue move forward. So we're asking this chamber to do whatever it can, no excuses, whatever it can, in order to guarantee a peace process that is lasting and that will guarantee the rights and the voices of the peoples concerned. We need to send out hope to all these people. There are people around the world who are saying, basta, yeah, that's enough now.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Volker Schnurbusch, seat 616, please.
Ja, vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin.
Thank you very much, President. We see this horrendous number of civilians who have been killed in this conflict. But according to reports, over 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza. Since Israel invaded 2 years ago, the number of reporters from Al Jazeera who were killed, that was in August. Here we have the reproach of targeted killings, which the Israeli military has denied, as it has in similar situations in the past. Since it's impossible to have neutral reporting, we don't have any evidence for this. But it's very important that representatives are able to travel to Gaza to be able to report on conditions there. And I'm calling on the Commission and the Council to have neutral reporting from Gaza. Thank you.
Next speaker is Diana Ivanovici-Sosuaka, seat 858, please.
Mulțumesc. De 2 ani de zile stăm și discutăm.
Thank you. Looking at what has been happening, it's been 2 years. We had lots of debates, lots of resolutions here in the EU and in the UN too. People have been talking about a two-state solution. It's very easy to say, but where do you draw the line for the border? As a lawyer, I have some concerns about that. Gaza, fully Palestinian, or in Netanyahu's hands. Israel and Netanyahu have their own interests. So it's not as easy as all that to decide where the border should go. There are many Israelis who've been protesting. 2 million Israelis have been out on the streets calling for an end to these crimes against humanity. Ultra-Orthodox Jews are saying these territories are not ours. They are not Israeli territories. They are Palestinian territories. 1948, handover by UN of certain territories is a topic that we're still not allowed to talk about in Romania.
79, please.
Thank you, President, dear colleagues, Commissioner. Let me say that today we are marking the 7th of October and 2 years. However, today we can also remember an event of 30 years that shattered the world when Yitzhak Rabin was shot by the Jewish extremists because he laid foundations for the appearance of the two-state solution, for the Oslo Agreement. That's what he said.
Fought against you, the Palestinians. We say to you today, in a loud and a clear voice, enough of blood and tears, enough.
And he was shot for these words, and at that time Netanyahu rejoiced. I don't believe in the change of Netanyahu. He is against the existence of the two-state solution, similarly as Trump. Therefore, in agreeing to this plan, we have to be very active and require the recognition of the two states. That would require us asking for guarantees to move forward.
Seat 647. Oh, there. Microphone, please.
Merci. President, Commissioner, Europe and this Parliament prides itself on complying with international law, championing the rule of law. A few questions, therefore, for the Commissioner, President von der Leyen and High Commissioner Kallas. Is the continuation of the EU-Israel trade agreement compatible with EU law? No. Is Israel interfering with EU aid and aid infrastructure? Yes. What are the EU Commission doing about protecting taxpayers' funds? Nothing. Is the arms trading with Israel by certain countries in the EU compatible with EU law? No. So why are we waiting? You need to play your part, Commission. Suspend the EU-Israel trade agreement forthwith. Halt the sale of arms to Israel by certain EU states. Stop prioritising dialogue over action in the face of abject genocide. Do your job. Do it right. Do it right now. Garmagi.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker will be Maria Zacharias, seat 846, please.
Κομισιόν και Συμβούλιο.
The Commission and the Council, the EU indirectly finances the occupation by buying arms and software, while the Commission has refused access to documents that prove your complicity on the basis of the EU legal service. Today, you talk about 2 years anniversary, but you forget the fact that Israel is systematically attacking Palestine since 1948, when they sent away thousands of Palestinians. Now, only 12% of the then territories belong to Palestine, and it is under blockade.
The floor to wind up the debate, please. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, dear members, for your remarks. I was listening carefully. And just to conclude, the European Union remains, as you know, steadfast proponent of the peace in the Middle East, and we are committed to the two-state solution. But let me reply to some of your questions which were repeated. To Mr. Botenga on sanctions, also some others, Madam Montero. As you know, sanctions on the extremists, ministers, and on violent settlers, and further sanctions against Hamas member. This was adopted by the Commission and proposed to the Council on the 17th of September. Also, there is a partial suspension of trade-related provisions of the association agreement. We are aware that it will be difficult to find majorities. I'm talking about the Council. And I know that any action will be too much for some and too little for others. This is what we are saying. To be adopted, these Commission proposals require EU member states' support by unanimity and qualified majority, respectively. We are not putting on hold, I have to mention this, support to fight anti-Semitism, among others, for Yad Vashem, and we are not touching support for the civil society, both Israeli and Palestinian civil society. To reply on genocide, as you know, the Commission will respect all rulings by the multilateral system based on international law and the universality of the human rights. On flotilla, because flotilla was mentioned several times, of course, as you know, the Commission has remained in regular contact with member states and with Israel regarding the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and we reiterate their consistent call for rapid and unimpeded delivery of aid. We respect the humanitarian commitment on those that were aboard the flotilla. In the European Union, everyone, as all of us know, has the right to exercise such activism and freedom of assembly. This is a core pillar of our values. The freedom of navigation under international law must be upheld, and no attacks or any use of force against flotilla, including drone strikes or seizure, are acceptable. And to end this reply, all consular authorities have been in charge and they ensured consular protection to their citizens. This is to reply to some of your questions. Just to conclude, the path for a sustainable peace should be built on inclusive dialogue, as you know, and respect for the international law. We need to learn from the lessons of the past, and we need to build on the momentum of the New York conference, which was co-led by France and Saudi Arabia. I have to mention Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution. It is supported by the European Union and is best placed to sustain the political horizon and credible pathway to the Palestinian statehood, which includes both Gaza and the West Bank, with the Palestinian Authority as the only viable partner. We want to achieve demilitarization
effective transitional governance, and establishing international stabilization force. These three elements are vital for sustainable peace, and they will require careful coordination and stakeholder engagement. The European Union has a key role to play as the longest-standing supporter of the Palestinian Authority and its reform agenda. Since there were questions, someone asked now, what has the European Union done? Someone said nothing, nada, but I just wanted to reiterate, we are the biggest donor and supporters of the Palestinian Authority, because if we are speaking about dialogue, about negotiations, we need both of them to sit at the table. So we need strong Palestinian Authority to sit at the table and no Hamas. Once again, I have to mention this. So this is our position. We also reiterate the indispensable role of the United Nations, also on UNRWA, which continues to be an important partner in delivering assistance. In close coordination with the international partners and with the United Nations, World Bank, European Union will play a key role in the recovery and the reconstruction process through the Palestinian Donor Group. This donor group can now be the main forum to bring together like-minded partners, including all EU member states, regional stakeholders, and signatories of the New York Declaration. This is the moment to invite all of them to participate on board of this donor group. This effort will evolve around the recovery and reconstruction strategy, which can be led by a reformed Palestinian Authority. And this will safeguard Palestinian ownership, set parameters, and offer an umbrella and credibility to individual initiatives. The dedicated instrument for Gaza and the European Union which is being developed, it will considerably back up this convening role. So, as I already said, Palestinian Authority should be stronger, and there is no place for Hamas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much for this. And to close the debate, I give the floor to the Council and Minister Bjerre. Please, the floor is yours.
President, honourable members, Commissioner, thank you for today's debate. It showed again that we are all committed to addressing the ongoing crisis in Gaza. We will remain dedicated to a peaceful resolution of the conflict, and we will contribute to the new momentum towards peace. In the Council, Member States are currently discussing the measures that the Commission proposed in September. Based on our continuous commitment to the Palestinian and Israeli people and our support to regional integration, the European Union is well positioned to offer valuable contribution. We will work jointly with our long-standing partners in the region and with our partners through the Global Alliance. The two-state solution remains our commitment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The debate is closed. The next item on the agenda is the joint debate on the Common Agricultural Policy. We have the report by Mr. Rodriguez amending certain CAP regulations as regard to conditionality systems, types of intervention in form of direct payment, types of intervention in certain sectors, and rural development, and annual performance reports, data and interoperability, governance, suspensions of payments, annual performance, clearance and control, and penalties. And the second report, the report by Ms. Imad, strengthening of the position of farmers in the food chain. And we will begin with Rapporteur Céline Imad. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Dear colleagues, this report is the fruit of months and months of work with just one aim: to strengthen the position of our farmers in the value chain. Revenue, one of their main demands in the 2024 demonstrations. Commissioner, you defended this first legislative